Before we begin today's story, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what people say about you when they think you're invisible? What if you walked into a room and everyone assumed you were nobody, when in reality you were the one person they should never underestimate? In today's shocking true-to-life story, a mother disguises herself as a cleaning lady at her son's workplace, only to uncover a twisted chain of lies, sabotage, and cruelty that nearly destroyed her family. But what she discovers next, it's something no parent should ever have to hear. Before we dive in, please like, share, and subscribe to The Spoken Pen, and tell me in the comments which part of the world you're listening from. Now let's begin. My name is Grace Mitchell, and for most of my life, I believed that if you worked hard and treated people with dignity, the world would eventually return that respect. I learned that belief from years of working my way up from receptionist to operations director of a major commercial development company. I lived modestly on purpose, not because I had to, but because I wanted my son, Evan, to grow up grounded. He never knew the full extent of my income, my influence, or the network I had built over 30 years. I didn't want money to define him. I wanted humility, compassion, and character to shape his life. But looking back now, I see the mistake I made. Because one day, that very humility put him directly in the path of a man who mistook kindness for weakness. That man was my son's boss, and I would have never known what was happening if it weren't for a single unexpected phone call. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when my office line rang. Something that almost never happened unless it was urgent. On the other end was Jenna, my son's girlfriend, whispering like she was hiding in a closet. Her voice trembled as she asked if Evan was with me. I told her no. She hesitated, then confessed she had overheard something at Evan's workplace. Something ugly, something painful, something no mother wants to hear. She told me Evan was being bullied, humiliated publicly, criticized relentlessly, and made to feel worthless. And worst of all, he hadn't told me any of it. He was too ashamed. When Jenna told me what his boss had said to him, calling him a charity case, claiming he only had his job because he knew someone, my knees nearly buckled. I felt guilt punch through my chest. I had called in a small favor when Evan was struggling to find footing after college. I hadn't guaranteed him anything. I'd simply ensured his resume was seen. But in the wrong hands, even good intentions become ammunition. Jenna went on to describe how Evan's boss berated him, sometimes in front of coworkers, sometimes in meetings, sometimes loudly enough that the entire floor could hear. She told me Evan came home drained, defeated, and terrified of slipping up. She told me he'd stopped sleeping, stopped smiling, and had started doubting his worth. And finally, she said the words that made my stomach drop. "Grace, he's being targeted. You need to see it with your own eyes." But she also said something else, something that would shape the entire course of the story. She said, "If you walk in as his mother or as a director, they'll hide everything. You have to go in as someone they won't even notice." And then with a hesitant breath, she added, "Go as a cleaning lady." First, I thought it was absurd. But as I sat alone in my quiet office, I realized she was right. A cleaning lady sees everything because no one sees her. People show their true selves when they believe the person in the room holds no power. If I wanted the truth, not the polished version, I had to become invisible. The following Monday, I changed everything about myself. I traded my tailored blazer for an oversized hoodie, my professional heels for old sneakers, and my subtle makeup for a bare, tired face. My reflection looked like a woman who worked late nights mopping floors, not someone who signed contracts worth millions. It was the first time in decades that even I didn't recognize myself. And that was exactly the point. I walked into the large glass building where Evan worked, entering through the back loading area where delivery drivers and night staff entered. No one questioned me. I walked with a slight hunch, kept my head down, and pushed a janitorial cart with the kind of quiet obedience people expect from invisible workers. Even the elevator ride was an education in human nature. People pressed themselves to the sides, avoided eye contact, and stared at their phones like I wasn't even there. I felt every barrier, every assumption, every dismissal. Stung. But I reminded myself, this is how they treat the people they think don't matter. I needed to see how they treated my son. When I reached the 17th floor, Evan's department, I felt my heart throb painfully. I spotted him at his desk, shoulders rounded, eyes dimmed with exhaustion. My brilliant, gentle son looked older than 26. Worn down, frayed, untethered. He didn't see me. Of course he didn't. No one looked my way. I started cleaning in the small kitchenette as employees filtered in and out, talking freely. And with each careless comment, my heart crumbled a little more. One man complained loudly about almost bumping into me, calling me "these people," as if I was garbage he needed to step over. Another mocked my presence, telling me to move so he didn't smell bleach before breakfast. They talked about Evan like he wasn't their coworker but their office punchline. They joked about him crying in his car, about how his boss destroyed him daily, about how Evan was barely hanging on. And then came the phrase that made my blood boil. He's just a charity hire. Everyone knows it. They laughed. My hands trembled. Piece of me snapped. But I stayed quiet. I had to, because something much darker was happening, and I wasn't ready for them to know who I was. Then, as if on cue, the atmosphere shifted. People straightened. The air thickened with anxiety. A sharp voice cut through the office like a cracking whip. "Mitchell! My office! Now!" That was him. Evan's boss. Daniel Parker. A man whose reputation, even from a distance, carried the scent of intimidation. I watched my son rise slowly, hands shaking, eyes lowered. He looked like prey responding to a predator's call. I followed discreetly, pretending to mop the hallway floor near Parker's glass-walled office. And then I heard it. The verbal assault. The cruelty. The venom. The calculated humiliation. Parker tore into Evan, calling him incompetent, stupid, a failure. He mocked his intelligence, questioned his worth, and threatened to fire him if he didn't fix a report by Friday. A report Evan swore he had triple-checked. A report that suddenly, mysteriously, had errors. The moment Evan stepped out of that office with tears gathering in his eyes, I had to grip my mop handle to stop myself from storming in. Every instinct in my body screamed to protect him, but I couldn't, not like that. Not yet. And then came the final blow of the day. One whispered conversation in the break room that changed everything I thought I knew. I overheard two analysts quietly discussing Evan's report. They said the numbers had been correct when he submitted them. They said someone had changed them afterward. And they suspected who. Their voices dropped to a near whisper when one of them said, "Parker altered the file himself. He's been doing it for months. He wants Evan gone." I felt my world tilt. My stomach churned. My hands turned cold. This wasn't stress. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't bad luck. This was sabotage. Cruel, calculated sabotage by a man who used power as a weapon. And in that moment, as I stood holding a mop with the weight of everything I just learned pressing against my chest, I made a silent promise. I will uncover every truth, every lie, every cruelty. And when I am done, Daniel Parker will regret the day he ever targeted my son. This was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evan in that glass office, shoulders trembling, forcing himself to swallow humiliation he didn't deserve. Every time I thought about the whispers I heard, about how Parker had sabotaged him deliberately, My chest tightened with anger so sharp it felt like a blade. But beneath the anger was something deeper: guilt. Crushing, suffocating guilt. I had always raised Evan to be independent, to stand on his own legs, to believe he earned everything he achieved. He took that lesson to heart so strongly that he never asked for help, never admitted weakness, and never wanted me to see him struggle. And now that same pride had kept him silent while his confidence was dismantled piece by piece. Lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I would go back the next day. As the cleaning lady. As the invisible woman they ignored. Because now I knew there was more happening than a harsh boss or an unfair workload. Something deeper was at play. Something intentional. I needed evidence, real proof, before I confronted anyone. So the next morning I put on the same hoodie, the same worn-out jeans, and tied my hair back the same way. I drove to the building and entered through the back, unnoticed and unimportant in the eyes of the people walking past me. And yet, in my mind, I walked with more purpose than any executive in that entire building. As soon as I reached the 17th floor, I saw the same atmosphere as yesterday: busy, rushed, anxious. Workers typed quickly, glancing nervously at emails, checking the hallway for signs of their boss. And again, not a single person looked at me. Not even when I wheeled my cart into the corner of the room and quietly began wiping tables that didn't need wiping. But it didn't take long before I noticed something strange. Evan wasn't at his desk. His backpack was there. His computer was turned on. His chair slightly pulled out. But he wasn't. I scanned the floor. Bathroom door? Closed. Meeting room? Empty. Hallway? No sign of him. My pulse quickened. Where was he? I continued cleaning, trying to appear casual while my heart raced. 20 minutes passed before I overheard two employees whispering near the printer. "Did you see Mitchell?" "No. He hasn't come back from Parker's office yet." "Seriously? It's been almost half an hour." "Yeah. He's probably getting destroyed again." My stomach dropped. Parker had called him in again. I didn't hesitate. I pushed my cart toward the hallway, pretending to mop the floor. When I reached Parker's office, I positioned myself near the wall, close enough to hear, far enough to stay unnoticed. Parker's voice sliced through the glass. "What did I tell you yesterday, Mitchell? What did I say?" Silence from my son. "Speak up. You're always mumbling like a frightened child." I'm sorry, sir." "Sorry doesn't fix my reputation." My jaw tightened. This man was obsessed with himself. His ego was a second personality, always hungry. Then Parker said something that made my blood run cold. "I know you didn't make yesterday's mistake." I did. My breath caught. He was admitting it. Openly. "And do you know why?" Parker continued. "Because I need you gone. I need an excuse that sticks. You don't belong here. You never did." I felt the air leave my lungs. He admitted the sabotage. Boldly. Cruelly. "To be honest," Parker added with a sneer in his voice, "your work is decent. Sometimes even good. But your presence here? That's what bothers me. You're not someone I chose. You were pushed through by people above me. And I don't tolerate plants." Plants. As if my son was an invasive weed. Evan's voice trembled. "I didn't ask for special treatment, sir. I interviewed." "Oh, please," Parker snapped. "Your mommy probably held your hand through the whole process." My chest ignited. I wanted to storm in and break every object in that office. Instead, I forced myself to stay. Because every word he said was the rope he was using to hang himself. Parker leaned closer. I could hear the smugness through the glass. "I need someone stronger. Smarter. Someone who climbs, not someone who waits to be lifted." My work speaks for itself, Evan said so quietly it hurt. Parker laughed. A cruel, sharp laugh meant to wound. No, doesn't. Does I change it? I rewrite it. Correct it. I manipulate it. And do you know why? Because I want the higher-ups to think you're incompetent. And it's working. I covered my mouth to stop the sound that escaped me. Half gasp, half cry. Evan whispered, voice breaking. Why? Why target me? It's simple, Mitchell. You annoy me. Your quiet little presence irritates me. You don't fight. You don't push. You don't suck up like everyone else. You walk around here like you're afraid to breathe. I'm not afraid. You are. And I can smell fear a mile away. My son stayed silent because he knew if he spoke, his voice would betray him. Parker leaned back in his chair. Here's what's going to happen. I'm giving your position to someone else. Someone who deserves it. Someone who knows how to play the game. What about me? Evan whispered. You'll stay until Friday. Then I'll have HR escort you out. And trust me, they won't hesitate. Evan's breath hitched audibly. But sir, my rent, not my problem. The next sound I heard was soft, barely audible. Evan was crying. And in that moment it took everything inside me not to break open that door. But then, something unexpected happened. The door opened. Evan walked out. Eyes red, face pale, shoulders hunched like the weight of the world had pinned him down. He walked past me without seeing me, disappearing into the far hallway. And behind him, Parker leaned out of his office, scanning the floor. I lowered my head so he wouldn't notice me, but he did look in my direction. Only briefly. Only long enough to grunt and mutter, "These cleaning people always loitering." Then he went back inside. As soon as he disappeared, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not rage. Not even hatred. Something bigger. Something colder. A kind of clarity that comes when you realize the moment for patience is over. I was done gathering information. Done being invisible. Done watching from the sidelines. This man thought he was climbing a ladder. He didn't know the ladder belonged to me, and I was about to pull it out from under him. But first I had to find my son. I abandoned the cart and followed the path Evan took, heart pounding with each step. I eventually found him outside on a small balcony, leaning over the railing, gripping the metal so tightly his knuckles had turned white. His shoulders shook as he tried to control his breathing. For a moment I stood quietly behind the glass door, letting the mother inside me soften before I spoke. Then I stepped outside. He didn't see me. He was too lost in his pain. I didn't approach him. I didn't touch him. I just stood beside him, quietly, softly, invisible but present. And for the first time I whispered, "You're not alone, sweetheart. Not anymore." He didn't look at me. He didn't hear me. But soon, very soon, he would. Because this was only the start of what I had to do. And by the time I was finished, Daniel Parker would learn what real power looked like. Not through threats. Not through manipulation. Not through fear. But through a mother. A mother he never saw coming. For the rest of the day my mind ran like a storm. Every corner I cleaned, every hallway I wiped, every trash bin I emptied, I was thinking, planning, calculating. Not as a cleaning lady, not even as a mother, but as a woman who had managed multimillion-dollar buildings, negotiated contracts, and handled crises bigger than an abusive manager with an oversized ego. I wasn't just Grace the mom. I was Grace Mitchell, the woman who held power Parker didn't even know existed. And for the first time I intended to use every ounce of it. But first I needed proof. Not whispered gossip. Not emotional testimony. I needed something undeniable. something that would make Parker fall on his own sword. So that afternoon I stayed later than usual. Later than the employees. Later than Parker. I waited until the office emptied, until the lights dimmed, until the hum of the building settled into nighttime silence. Then I made my move. I wheeled my cart into the analytics department, pretending to empty trash cans. But instead of tossing paper into my bag, I paused and examined each bin. I found old drafts of the report files, notes in handwriting that I didn't recognize, numbers crossed out, figures rewritten, formulas altered. Some pages were torn, others folded and tossed hastily, as if someone didn't want them seen. I collected them all, stacking them neatly beneath a layer of real trash. Then I moved to Parker's office. The glass door was locked, of course, but the cleaning personnel always had a master access card. I slid it quietly. The light turned green. My heart pounded. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. The room smelled like expensive cologne and bitter coffee. His desk was perfectly organized, almost suspiciously so. I opened the drawers one by one, finding nothing but pens, files, and a few personal objects. Then I reached the bottom drawer. Locked, which meant something. I reached for the key taped to the bottom of the desk, a common executive hiding spot. And there it was. When I opened the drawer, my breath stilled. Inside was a folder labeled simply, Mitchell, my son's last name. I felt my blood turn cold. Inside were printed emails, performance reviews, copies of reports, and even photos, pictures of Evan sitting alone looking stressed, exhausted, overwhelmed. Parker had been documenting him like some kind of obsessed predator building a case. But the worst was a stack of printed spreadsheets. I compared them to the files I found in the trash. In every version Evan completed, the numbers were correct. And in every version Parker printed, the numbers had been changed by Parker himself. On some pages, he had even written sarcastic comments in the margins. Typical. Useless. He'll crack soon. My throat constricted. He was tracking my son like a hunter tracks prey. I pulled out my phone and silently photographed every document, every page, every label. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. When I left the office, I felt a strange calm in my chest, like the calm before a storm. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I arrived early and blended into the cleaning staff again. Employees rushed in with coffee cups and laptops, unaware that today would change everything. I needed someone inside the company to confirm Parker's behavior. Someone who saw what he was doing but was too afraid to speak. And I already had a name. At lunch, I approached one of the analysts I overheard earlier, the younger one. He sat alone, scrolling through his phone. I cleared my throat gently. "Excuse me," I said softly. He barely glanced up. Yeah. I'm cleaning the conference room next door. And, well, I overheard something yesterday. About Mr. Parker. About the report." He froze. His eyes widened. He glanced around to see if anyone was listening. You heard that?" "Yes," I whispered. "And I saw things in his office last night. Papers. Files. I know what he's doing to Evan." He swallowed hard. "I can't talk about it. If Parker finds out I said anything." "He won't," I said gently. "I promise you. But someone needs to help Evan. He's being torn apart." The young man hesitated. His hands trembled slightly. Then he leaned closer. "We all know," he whispered. "Everyone on the floor knows. Parker hates your son. He's been sabotaging him for months, changing files, turning people against him, making jokes about him during meetings." My jaw tightened. "Why hasn't anyone gone to HR?" He laughed bitterly. "HR works for Parker. They do whatever he wants. No one will risk their job for a junior analyst. Someone needs to speak. Not me, he said quickly. I have a little sister. I help pay our bills. I can't lose this job. I nodded. He wasn't wrong. Fear is a powerful leash. Then he added in a trembling voice, "But I'll tell you one thing. If someone higher up, like someone from corporate, got involved, everyone would talk. Everyone would testify. Everyone is sick of Parker. They just need protection." And that was the moment I realized Parker had made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought he was untouchable. He thought no one above him cared. He didn't know the person he was targeting was the mother of one of the highest-ranking executives in the building's owning corporation. I wasn't just a cleaning lady. I wasn't even just a mother. I was his boss's boss's boss. And he had no idea. That afternoon, something happened I didn't expect. As I cleaned near the hallway, Evan approached, eyes heavy, face pale. He didn't look at me at first. He just spoke. "They're firing me Friday," he whispered to no one. "And I don't know what I did wrong." My throat tightened. He wasn't speaking to me because he didn't know it was me. He was speaking because he couldn't hold it in anymore. "I tried," he said softly, voice trembling. "I tried so hard. Jenna keeps telling me it's not my fault, but she doesn't see what they see. They think I'm nothing. They think I'm stupid. They think I don't belong here." My vision blurred. I wanted to take off that hoodie, throw it on the ground, and wrap my arms around him. But not yet. Not here. Not where they could see him break down in the arms of a stranger. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know why everyone hates me. I don't know why Parker is like this. I'm just trying to survive." He sniffed, voice breaking. "I just want to make you proud, Mom." My heart shattered. But I kept my voice soft, steady, disguised. "You already do," I whispered. "More than you know." He didn't look at me. He didn't recognize me. But he paused, as if the words reached somewhere deep inside him. Then he walked away. And I made my decision. Tomorrow I would no longer be invisible. Tomorrow they would see exactly who I was. Tomorrow the cleaning lady would vanish. And the woman who owned the building would take her place. The storm was coming. And I was the storm. The next morning the air felt different. Heavy. Still. Like the building itself sensed something coming. I arrived earlier than the cleaning crew, earlier than the employees, earlier than the man who thought he ruled this floor. But today was not like the other days. Today I wasn't in disguise. Gone were the worn-out jeans and oversized hoodie. Instead, I wore my usual work attire. A tailored navy blue blazer, a crisp blouse, black slacks, and my name badge clipped professionally against my lapel. Grace Mitchell, Operations Director. A badge that granted access to floors most people in this building would never step foot on. I took the executive elevator that day. The one that required a special key card. The one Parker had probably never seen from the inside. As I ascended to the 17th floor, I felt no anger, no panic, no nerves, only a calm determination, like someone walking into a room already knowing the ending of the story. The doors opened. Employees turned toward the sound, expecting another coworker, another analyst, another rushed young professional, but instead they saw me. Not the cleaning lady, not the invisible woman pushing a cart. They saw a director. Every whisper died instantly. Every keyboard stopped clicking. Eyes widened in confusion and then horror, and finally recognition. Because even without knowing my name, everyone in this building knew the power of a director badge. I walked calmly across the floor, heading straight toward the glass office at the end of the hallway. People parted around me as if I were walking through water. Some stood up unconsciously. Others stared openly. A few already knew something was wrong. And then, Parker walked in, coffee in hand, swagger in his step, voice booming loud enough for everyone to hear. "Move, people. Some of us have actual work too." He froze mid-sentence. His eyes locked with mine. I watched the realization hit him like a speeding truck. He blinked, then blinked again. "You," he whispered. "You're the director." I said calmly, "Yes, that's correct." A few employees gasped softly. One nearly dropped his coffee. Parker straightened his suit jacket awkwardly, forcing a smile that trembled at the edges. "Miss Mitchell, I didn't know you were visiting our floor today." "I wasn't," I replied. "Not as myself, at least." His jaw tensed. I stepped closer, lowering my voice without lowering my authority. "Perhaps we should speak privately." He swallowed hard. "Of course," he managed, opening his office door with a hand that visibly shook. I stepped inside, but instead of sitting, I placed a thick stack of printed papers heavily on his desk. Documents I had photographed, reports altered, emails faked, notes filled with insults. A folder labeled Mitchell, the one he thought no one would ever see. His face drained of color. What is all this?" he stammered. "You tell me," I said. He tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to spin a lie. But every word died before it left his lips. I leaned forward. "Let me be very clear, Mr. Parker. I spent 2 days disguised as cleaning staff in this building. I saw how you treat people you believe are beneath you. I heard what you said. I witnessed how you sabotaged my son's work. I saw how you used your position to manipulate, intimidate, and humiliate him." His eyes widened. I didn't know he was your son." I held his gaze. "That's exactly why you're in this position." He opened his mouth again. "You sabotaged him," I said coldly. "You altered his work. You targeted him out of ego. You mistreated employees. You created a hostile workplace. And you documented your cruelty like trophies." He collapsed into his chair. "But," he whispered desperate, "we can fix this. I can fix this." "No," I said firmly. "You won't be fixing anything. HR will." His brows furrowed. "You're firing me?" "No," I said calmly. "HR is firing you. I am simply delivering the evidence." He opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, there was a knock at the door. 3 higher-level HR executives stepped in, followed by the vice president of operations. And then, Evan. Evan walked in slowly, confusion written across his face. His eyes flicked from me to Parker to the HR team back to me again. His voice cracked. "Mom? What are you?" I smiled softly. "I think it's time you knew the truth." Parker slammed his hand on the desk. "You set me up." "No," I corrected. "You set yourself up." I simply pulled back the curtain. The VP turned to him. "Daniel Parker, you are being dismissed effective immediately." Parker jolted. "You can't fire me because she has personal ties." "Oh no," the VP said, voice like steel. "We can fire you because you violated company policy, abused your authority, sabotaged work files, created a hostile workplace, and targeted an employee repeatedly. Your behavior is disgraceful." HR stepped forward. "Escort him out." Parker stood up, shaking with rage. "This isn't fair. You can't do this. You don't understand." But they ignored him. As Parker was escorted past the entire floor, every employee stared. Some looked relieved. Some looked vindicated. Some even smiled. But Evan, Evan looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. When Parker disappeared into the elevator, silence fell over the room. Then Evan walked to me slowly, carefully, as if approaching something fragile. "Mom," he whispered. "It was you. You were here, watching everything." I nodded. Tears welled in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you wouldn't have let me," I said softly. "You wanted to succeed on your own. And you have. What happened here was never your weakness. It was his." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I didn't want you to worry." "I will always worry," I whispered. "That's what mothers do." He stepped forward and hugged me. A long shaking hug. Employees looked away respectfully. For the first time in months, I felt my son breathe freely. Evan was offered Parker's position. He didn't take it. He wanted a fresh start, somewhere his name wasn't stained by a coward's cruelty. I supported him completely. And with my network behind him, not my influence but my guidance, he found a new job at a company that valued him. Today he walks with confidence. He sleeps peacefully. He laughs again. And me? I still walk into buildings unnoticed sometimes. I still greet every cleaner with genuine respect. Because invisibility doesn't mean unimportance. And power doesn't come from titles. Sometimes, true power comes from being underestimated. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this emotional journey touched you or gave you something to think about, please like, share, and subscribe to The Spoken Pen. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to the world. And I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from, and what you would have done in this mother's place. Your voice matters here. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and stay tuned for more stories on The Spoken Pen.